Hi, everyone. You're listening to episode 61 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. Thanks so much for inviting us to your table. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a hope of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I'm joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
The Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris.
And tossing it over to the Deluxeifier.
Hello, you got Pete here.
All right, today our furry, feathery, and scaly friends take center stage. We'll start with a walk in the forest using pebbles and twigs and saws and jigs to build constructions for cute little critters in Everdell. Then it's off to an uncharted island exploring harrowing habitats in a wild wilderness in our quest to collect the most wondrous creatures. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll act like the animals we are as we pit these games against each other in our ultimate showdown, the Battle of the Funnest. But before we start this creature feature, David, what's our topic of discussion for today?
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic, I think. What do you guys feel about a player or players conceding in a game, kind of like they do in chess, versus playing out the game all the way to the end? I know this is something we don't really see a lot of in the board game world, but I was reading recently just somebody's thread that they had going on about this. Like, somebody's running away with the game. Is it okay to just concede that game and start over? Or... I realized that as a board gamer, I've never ever done that with a board game, but I've conceded in chess because I used to play a lot of chess. But what are your thoughts on conceding a game instead of playing it out to the bitter end?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it like 2v2? Like you're...
It could be that,
1v1,
or if
I
it's
should say.
1v1. It could be a group setting where if you feel like somebody's running away with the win, everybody's just like, hey, let's concede this. Say you won.
So the entire game ends, not just you leaving the game.
You could leave the game too. It could be
Okay,
taken
well, I did
anyway,
this on one of these games, so I am all for this because I literally, on one of these games we're going to be discussing, just stopped playing.
I do remember this game. It would be interesting to get other people's opinions on the table when you did this too. But yeah, I'm just curious.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I remember that unless it... Well, I guess I'll let you tell about it. That was the one case I was going to say that's where I would not be okay with it. If it's a 5-person game or a 4-person game and one person says, I'm just done. And then the rest are like, well, now we're playing with 4-person rules, but there's only 3 people or something like that. I'm not for that. If it's a 1v1 and you can both agree, or even if you can't, if it's a 1v1, I understand that. And if it's a group game, as long as everybody agrees. But I wouldn't want it to be, okay, one person just says, you know what, I'm not having fun. Because you kind of, when you start a game, you're going into a contract, I'm going to finish this game, we're going to play this game. And unless everybody agrees, you shouldn't destroy the fun for everybody else, Danielle.
Well, I mean, when you're getting rickrolled day in and day out, and then you're trying to play the game and it's just people are still destroying you on your first game, like that's not fun. So I played out the game, but I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah, destroying you or like targeting you?
Yeah.
As well? Yeah, that's not that might be, and I hope it wasn't me, but it could have been.
It's always you, Chris. I literally said to you during the game we were playing,
this is
like,
a great topic.
this is where we're going.
I'm going to shut
what
up.
What do you think?
Well, I think there's 2 sides to this story. Number one, I know it depends on who you're playing with. If it's a friend and you guys can agree on it and say that's fine. But generally for me, if I'm playing a game, I'm going to see it through. The other thing that I would say is if you're just totally clobbered and the other person who's winning is just dragging it out, I don't think that's good etiquette either when they know they got the game locked up. But I've also seen games where you look like you're behind and there might be that catch-up mechanism where you can come from behind and actually pull off a win. So it's kind of tricky on this one. I think there's a lot of dependencies on if I would do it. Personally, I probably wouldn't. I'm in for a game. I'm going to play it and see it through, win or lose.
Glory to Realm.
we had a Castles of Burgundy game that you and I were playing on BGA, and you were just destroying me. And I thought, okay, there's probably no chance, but
Yeah.
I saw, well, maybe there's this one path, and I almost got you. But that was a case where I very easily could have conceded because I was being destroyed. And I will point out that on one of your turns, you drafted a tile you did not need because you knew that I needed it.
I think you still won that game. We can go back. I think you won it by like 2 points. But that's the point. I mean, you never really know how the game's going to end. Certain games, you know, we'll use the example of chess. If you are so far behind and you're never going to catch up, I can see conceding at that point. But that's that type of game which kind of is conducive to giving up, and that's accepting that you've already lost the game. So that's just my opinion on it.
Thanks, David.
I'm gonna take this time to apologize to Daniela.
Yeah, we're cutting that from the script. All right, so those are opinions on conceding in games, and we'd like to know what you guys all think out there. So let us know by sending us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media or on our BGG Guild, or you guys can check us out on our website at fifthmeeple.com. And in addition to subscribing to our show, one of the best ways to help us grow is to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen. And if you do, we may just read one of your reviews on an upcoming episode. Hey guys, that tree over there looks pretty interesting, so let's head into our discussion of Everdell.
Everdell is a 1-to-4 player worker placement and hand management game set under the shelter of the enduring Evertree. It's time for new territories to be settled, and you're just a critter for the task. The game takes place over 4 seasons, beginning in late winter, with 2 workers each. On your turn, you may place a worker, play a card, or prepare for the next season. When you place a worker, there are a variety of locations to visit, some of which are limited to 1 critter, while others can handle multiples. The basic action spaces, which are the same each game, provide resources and cards. You can only ever have 8 cards in your hand, but you can store unlimited resources, including twigs, berries, resin, and pebbles. The variable forest locations also provide cards, resources, or special actions. Event locations are goals that players race toward, claiming them by placing a worker, and the Haven allows you to discard cards for resources. Some cards, once played, also offer destinations for placement, and only in the final season, players may also send their workers on a journey, discarding cards for points. When playing a card, you may play one from your hand or one of the 8 cards that are face-up in the meadow. Cards are either constructions or critters, and when playing them into your city, you must pay the price indicated on the card. Many constructions, however, are very attractive to certain critters, so much so that if you have them in your city, you can play the corresponding critter for free once per construction. Your city can only hold a total of 15 cards. Each card provides a benefit that either triggers at certain times or is ongoing. When preparing for a season, you bring back all of your workers. You also gain new workers depending on which season is next, and sometimes activate certain card powers. Players may transition to new seasons at different times, continuing play 1 turn at a time. The game ends when the last player has completed all of their turns in the final season. Players then earn points from their cards, point tokens, events, and journeys. The player with the most points wins the game and kicks the others in their twig and berries. Everdell was designed by James A. Wilson and was first published in 2018 by Starling Games.
All right, so speaking of Twiggins and Berries, let's talk about this game overall and what you guys thought are some of the fun moments in the game or the things that you liked about the game overall. I mean, overall, we kind of cracked open this game. I feel so behind in playing this game. I feel like this has been out for a hot second, and we finally got it to the table. I know at the church group night, many times someone had brought this game, and I always would see it, and it's like amazing, right? The table presence is really cool. The board is just not a square or a rectangle. It's got these really cool cutouts. The tree is pointless, but it's cool. It's just got a really nice overall presence. So I think overall it's like cutesy. I think it would attract a certain kind of player that would like this game and kind of play it. And so I think overall it's just a cute game. I don't know how to like describe it much more than that.
Yeah, I'm usually not one for art or that kind of thing, but I think the art is fantastic. The components I think are excellent. I can envision these little guys, sticking twigs and pebbles together with the resin or enticing someone to come with juicy berries. The theme works really, really well. Is the tree superfluous? Yes. Is it awesome? Yes. So I think the table presence is really, really good.
One of the things I like about the game is it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome. When you're playing it, it's one of these games that starts off, you got 2 workers, and you're like, I can't do anything. You start with no resources, and you got to build up. But after you go through those seasons and you gather more workers, your engine, not necessarily your engine, but you continue to build, and there's a nice ramp of the way that the game flows. First, I think your first comment was, how can you get 15 of these things built? Mm-hmm. Because after that first round, you're pulling back and you're thinking, I built like one thing. How am I going to get them anymore? The other thing that I really like about the game is the wooded areas, depending upon what cards come out and what resources are available, the games can be very different from game to game. I know we played 2 games back to back, and at least from my perspective, they were very, very different because one of the points was you could get, stone. Stone is important. I usually mention that when we first start to play a game, what are some of the important components to get? It's a resource gathering, so you need those resources. And stone wasn't available, and I didn't get any.
Yeah, that
so
was tough.
I had to shift the way that I was playing my game a little bit in order to score. And quite honestly, I didn't do as well as the first game. But I do like that the game can feel very different, even just with having a few cards differently. David?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Pete. I think the game can plays differently, and maybe I'll talk about it maybe on the other flip side of this table. But the good thing I like about this game is I agree with you guys. The theme, it just comes off as, I want to say, like comfort food almost when I'm playing this game. I'm really immersed in the theme, maybe because the components are really well done, but I feel like I'm actually in this world that they've created, which I really like. And to me, like, one of the best feelings that I get from this game is when I can build a structure and then I see that creature or that teacher or whatever the thing that goes with that structure is, and I just get to pick it up for free. I think there's no better feeling, and I love that feeling I get where it's like, okay, I built this, and I can draft that character, and I don't have to pay anything for it, because a lot of these games, a lot of times in this game especially, I think the resources are pretty tight, and so it just feels really good when you do that. And so it's one of the things that's always stuck with me with this game is just that card combo play. Can I never pay for a creature if I can help it, kind of thing going on. So
to the point where when you do pay for a creature, you feel like, oh man,
I feel like
I missed something.
Yeah,
I overpaid for that one. and then the building comes out right after it. I've had that happen to me a number of times, and it can be a little frustrating, but that's part of the game too.
Yeah. I think, David, you made a good point. I think there's a balance between with the resource management. It's like, am I going to pull back and bring all my pawns back, or what can I possibly eke out, and do I need to buy early on? Like, there's a whole like little game in there that you have to figure out, like, am I going to stretch this as far as I can go, or place all my pawns, or can I buy something? And I think the second game that we had played, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this time and just kind of throw something against the wall and see if it worked. And from the beginning, that did not work for me. And then I was kind of lost, because I was like, oh man, I really don't know what else I should be going for, because I couldn't get those characters to go with their habitat, or however that worked back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for a really long time. So interesting little, knowing when to do things is important in this game. And you can't be too risky, because if you pull all your characters back all the time, like, your game's done essentially, and other people could be in other seasons.
Yeah, you want to take as many actions as you can. One of the things that I like about the game is the actions are very simple. You either play a character by paying the resources or having the room, or place a worker out there and gather resources. The last thing that you can really do is pull back your workers. So you have decisions to make, but again, you don't get too much AP analysis paralysis, because you only have so many resources, and you really got to try to figure out, I need to spend those resources. I can't just wait, because every time you spend an action, you need to make that action worth your while to do. And one of the nice things about the game, I guess the thing that I like about the game, is those action spaces, and how when somebody pulls back, all of a sudden there's more places to go. And sometimes, we talk about games where there's timing on, can I take that one extra turn, because I know David's going to pull back, which is going to open up a whole bunch of things, and then Danielle's going to pull back, and then I have a lot of different options to choose from to get resources. So sometimes you just want to keep going as much as you can, even if it's something small, just so you can get that timing right, so you can take advantage of that.
This is interesting coming from you for the next game that we're going to be talking about, and pulling back and keeping your players on the board too long. So I just want to mention that right there, because that's coming. Pete.
Yeah, for me, I'll also say that I think from a worker placement standpoint, sometimes I feel like games are a little too tight on the worker placement. I can never get where I want to go. Sometimes they're a little too loose, and you can always get what you want. And I think this is like that baby bear bed place where it's just right. And the worker placement isn't so loose that I get anything I want, but I can always get something, right? And as a result, the economy isn't where I can do anything I want to, but I can get something and I can try to work it out. And for me, it's especially maybe, you know, we tend to play later in the day, and it's got to be the right time if I'm playing a really tight, really hard game. But this guy, I think, just finds that right combination of both worker placement and economy to where I always feel like I can do something and find a path to get done. Well, it may not be exactly what I want to do. I can do something that'll work.
Yeah, those forest actions are the main actions, not the forest actions, but the main actions. There are a couple locations where multiple players can go, so you do have that option to get those resources. Maybe not the most important resource that you want, but you also grab cards, which can be used as a resource as well. We didn't play that a whole lot, but near the end of the game, cards can be a valuable resource to have, especially when you're cashing out at the end. And that's one of the other little things that I do like about this game is in the last round, only in autumn, when you're pretty much done with the game, this gives you an opportunity to score some points by cashing in those cards that you got and actually getting points, so you don't feel like you're just out. You know, there's some games where you're left with a lot of resources or things like that, and they don't score you any points. So I do like that they built that into the game, and I think that's an important part of the game.
Yeah, I think that's a viable strategy for sure.
And the last thing I'll say is I'm a big fan of the cards that let you either get rid of a critter or get rid of a construction that's already in your city. Thematically, maybe it's a little bit brutal. You take advantage and exploit something, and then you just either throw it in the dungeon or whatever. I'm not advocating that in real life, but in the game, I love that move to be able to maximize. Okay, I'm going to use. I only got 15 spaces, and again, once you've played it enough times, you realize that you can fill more spaces than that if you could. And sometimes it's that tight of what's the right ones to do. And when you can play a card, get the benefit, and then find a way to get rid of that card, all of a sudden, again, you're opening yourself up to that 16th benefit or that 17th benefit. And I really do like the cards that allow me to do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to some of the things that are kind of the thorns in our butts in this game.
Are we open for business? That would be the first thing that I would say is there are certain cards that other players can use your buildings if they have an open sign. Mm-hmm. And unless if you really announce that or you know the game very well and know what those cards are, you may not recognize that. And I know the first game that Chris and I were playing, I was hitting his building quite often. But one of the things that I know, and this will be kind of like a bling it out a little bit, a lot of people will 3D print little street signs saying open for business, which I think it's really good if you can get those and you do play them, because it does add to the table presence a little bit. And it does let other players know that there's something there. Mm-hmm. They can then maybe ask what that building is, because again, sometimes you're across, diagonally. I can't really read what that is. So,
but it's not just the worker placement buildings either. It's any card someone has in front of them.
Yeah,
you kind of need to know what this person's capability is and what they might be able to do. What are they trying to build? What's the building they've got? And you can't. There's just, we don't play at a massive table, but I can't tell what Daniela, who sits next to me, what's in her cards unless I lean into her space to do it.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention to.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to remember 60 cards towards the end of the game, even if you do. And so it's just, I can't glance over there. I don't know if anyone's going to mention it. I'm remembering, I don't have them in front of me right now, but I'm remembering the text on these cards being pretty darn tiny. Mm-hmm. And so even if you have the card in front of you, it's hard to tell what it is alone if it's in front of somebody else.
Yeah, I almost wish on some of the things they had, especially like a probability too, because sometimes you might have a building and you're looking for that creature, and some creatures there's more than others, and I feel like the number is always just random. I had printed out a sheet so it tells me everything because I couldn't stand it myself, but I wish they did something like Wingspan where at least they give me like a percentage, like, oh, there's like 3 cards in here, like 1 out of 3 or something like that. It could just be on the bottom, very small. I've seen games do this a lot of, and maybe it's just because this game was produced way earlier than a lot of these games, but I do like knowing a lot of how many is this card, because if I'm looking for that creature, is it worth it for me to build this building? Because I just saw 2 get flushed down the drain somehow, or I just know somebody dumped them. Is this thing even still out there? But a lot of times I have no clue if that's a valuable card or not just by looking at it, because I don't know how many are in the deck.
Yeah, that was frustrating for me, trying to get the right creature to the right habitat that you're trying to build, because if you just saw whatever 2 kings come out and people take them, and you had the castle and you've been waiting for that, you like, it's like, am I still going for that? Am I going to wait for more cards to come out, or am I trying a different strategy moving forward? So the cards that play with each other in the 2 games that we had played back to back was kind of like, ugh, like we were all like, who dealt these cards? Who shuffled this? You know, like we're always complaining about that. But that I thought that was tough to try and get some of those combos.
I saw in BGG there was people showing cards where on the card there was like a rock that had 3 ticks on it, and that's how you knew there were 3 of those in the game. But when we were playing, I couldn't find that on any of our cards. So I don't know if that was a special version or a newer version or something. But I saw people posting, "This is how you know," and it wasn't on our cards. But even that was like, okay, you got to know to look at that rock, and it wasn't straightforward.
Yeah.
The last thing that I would say is this is a game where if you don't maximize your turn, somebody can go into a second season and you're still in the first season, and near the end of the game, I've seen it where somebody finishes, they placed all their workers, and somebody else that they still have 2 workers to play. And, whoever finishes that game early, they're sitting out for a while. And I think that's one of the downsides of this game, because at that point, I'm going to guess that if you already went out, you're probably not going to win. That's just kind of the way that I take it, that you need to make sure you're maximizing those turns. But at the end of the game, like I said, somebody can finish early, and then they're just sitting there waiting, and maybe they total up their score or whatever, but they're sitting around for maybe another 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys felt like this, but I felt like the interaction between us was a little bit like fake. Like it wasn't like exciting. Like there wasn't really anything. I know, like on the one turn, I think David kept going, take that card, like Pete wants it. But then at that point, it's like, even hate drafting, I'm like, I don't want to buy that card. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's going to get you points or something like that, like it was going to mess up my hand, and I'm waiting for the plays to go around because as other people are taking cards from that center, I'm hoping that one thing comes out that I need in that time. It's a shot in the dark, but I don't know. Like I felt like the interaction between a lot of us was just kind of like ho hum. I don't know. It wasn't very exciting. It was just kind of like we were all doing our own thing and hunting and gathering on our own. And I don't know. I felt like it should be a little bit more devious, like I'm taking little things and berries from you, and like I don't know.
I do agree. I think it's a little bit limited on that. I also do agree with Pete. I've seen people get done like not even just a little bit early, like 40 minutes early, and they're just going to do something else because there's nothing for them to do. And I really don't like that in games. I almost think the fix is, but I think it's too powerful, is that they just get a point every time it comes around to them to see if the players really want it. Maybe that's a viable strategy, is you just go out first, and the people who are going to take their time, then they got to generate more than 1 point every time it comes back to them, to kind of try to speed that game up a little bit. But I don't personally like that. I've seen it happen, and I think it just makes for a bad experience, especially if it's their first time and everybody else is maximizing, because that's normally what it is if you have 2 players that played a lot and you're introducing a newbie and they're just playing fast and then they just sit there, and it's like there's nothing you could do about it at that point.
What game did we play that does do that, where if you go early, you get a point until everybody else goes out? There was a game we played that does that.
Yeah, there was a game. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but there is a game that's out there that does that. And I like that mechanism because it makes everybody kind of get with the program, because it was Deep Regrets, wasn't it? If like you keep passing, they keep getting cards.
Deep Regrets it was, yeah.
But it wasn't points, but they kept getting benefits, and I did like that each round. But the other thing I would say is that we talked a little bit about the action spaces, the additional ones that we randomize out there. I feel like this game, and maybe there's been an update because we only played the original version. I know there's been a lot of reprints and stuff like that, but I almost feel like this game could deal with like how Black Forest does with it, where there's certain like animal shapes that Black Forest does, so that each card is associated with animal shapes. So even though it's randomized, it's still randomized to a point, because I think the gameplay can vary, and some people really like that. But it's a drastically different experience, and it almost should say, like, hey, if you want to play a crazier game or a way tighter game, do this. If you want to play, like, a normal, like, kind of game, do this. But
you're talking about combinations of which cards go in those
of cards, because I think that last game we played, there was no stone at all available off the bat. And so it did make the first player have a huge advantage, because I think a lot of times, at least my experience with this game is, I like going last because I like having 8 cards. Because I could see more, I could do more, I could kind of craft my strategy. And I don't think going last a lot of times, it's not tight enough on the board for it to really affect that player. I think only in rare occurrences is it that tight. But that's one of my other beasts with this game a little bit, as I just feel like the starting resources based off player position, I don't know, I feel like it's a little off sometimes on this game in particular. I feel like there's a advantage sometimes of going last in a 4-player game than first. But it is what it is.
When I teach this game, especially to a new player, what I usually do is I'll pull out cards that are easy to play with. I will get the ones that give you the extra stone, or you can trade things, because I do want that first experience to be good.
And then you slam them.
then the next play, you say, okay, now we're going to mix it up. Yeah. But I do that regularly, not only with this game, but a lot of other games too, where I want that first experience when people are playing it to be really good. And I don't want it to be punishing.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. And that was one of the comments that I said, that depending upon what comes out and is an experienced player, that's part of the challenge of the game, trying to figure out, how do I work around all these restrictions that we have? I do like that, but I also see your point with that being tough at times.
Mm-hmm. Last thing I had was that there were times as we were playing where there were 2 and maybe even 3 of the exact same card in the meadow. That's a little bit frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Especially in lower player counts, where at least at higher player counts, there's more of those cards turning over. At lower player counts, there isn't. There's no mechanism really to turn those cards over. And when you're late in the game and you need cards to come out and there's 3 farms sitting there that no one are going to take or something at that point, that's a little frustrating to me. I don't want it to be too much cycle, but I'd like there to be some way that, okay, 3 of the same cards, I'll get rid of one of them or something along those lines.
No, I agree with that. That's a good point.
Yeah, that was one of my dislikes that I had too, that said sometimes the meadow can get a little stale. And I think they do resolve that a little bit with that second round, having to take some cards from the meadow. But again, if you're already topped out with as many cards as you can get, you can't draw anymore. So it can get stale. I think there is 1 or 2 cards that allow you to remove a couple cards, throw something out and take it. But again, those are few and far between.
Yeah.
All right. I think that concludes it. David, take us to the collector's corner.
Yeah, so right now, Everdell, it came out in 2018, so another pre-COVID era game. And it's holding really well as far as price goes. I mean, for a game that's come out then, it's $75 right now on Amazon. So if you don't have any local board game stores or anything around you, it's $75. I think even at some local board game stores I was looking at online, I mean, it's anywhere between $60 and $65 still. And I mean, we're talking about a 7-year-old game now. But as far as it being used on the used market, it's going anywhere between $35 to $50 used, and that's even in today's world. There's been a lot of crazy additions. They've deluxified this stuff out at the wazoo, so you can find way more expensive copies. But if you're just looking to get into base game Everdell, that's what you're kind of looking at price-wise.
Okay, thanks. Let's go around and just give our final thoughts. Chris.
Yeah, the first time I played it, I feel differently now, having played it several times, as opposed to the first time that I went over Pete's. He taught me the game, and the first time through, I was like, I don't know. It just seems like, how am I ever going to find those right combinations? And then every time I played it, my scores were going up every single time. And I think the last game we played, I was in the 70s, which I'm quite happy with, compared to like 40 something out of my first game or something. That tells me again, the more you just go in here and play it once and make all your decisions on it based on that. That's not enough. You've got to play it enough to understand the mechanisms how to manipulate them. And having done that, this is a game I have gone out and looked at the price. I saw the 75 and said, nope, right? I didn't like it that much, but it is one that I would consider adding to my collection. Again, I think it's the right level of tightness for what I would enjoy playing most of the time.
All right, Pete.
Yeah, I really like this game. I think just the cuteness that we talked about when it's on the table, having it at a church night or a game night, people are going to be drawn to it, especially new gamers. And there's quite a bit of game there, too. So it's deceivingly complex game, and not overly complex in your actions, but in how you generate things together and trying to go for bonus points and those cards, because you did a fantastic job. I looked at my scores. I think that was the highest that I've ever seen as far as scoring. Generally, my games have always been around 40. If I'm lucky, 50 points. So you really knocked that one out of the park with that game that you played. So this is a game I enjoy. I will play this anytime I see it out.
David.
Yeah, this kind of was, I know Chris had talked about in episodes previous about he played, I think, Terraforming Mars way early, and he had a really bad experience. And when we were talking about playing it again, he was like, I'm not playing this. That's kind of my story with Everdell. I remember playing this as maybe one of my first modern board games, and I think I, went out too earlier. The rules weren't explained well, and I remember just sitting there, and I was like, this is so dumb. Like, if this is what a modern board game is, I don't want anything to do with these things. But, coming back to it years later, I never sold it because I just like collecting things. So it sat and sat and sat. And, when we were talking about doing this episode, I wanted to make sure it's like, okay, let's give this a second chance because it's ranked really high. You know, maybe people are right about this game, and maybe I just had a really bad first play that I remember vividly. But after playing this, you know, my opinion on this game, it's definitely changed. I really enjoy the different aspects. I do think there are pitfalls for beginners, and I think if you don't guide them well, this could turn people off to the hobby. But I also think that if you guide them well, they could really enjoy and like this game. And, you know, just reading some of the reviews online, you know, as we were sitting here, all the one reviews are hilarious. So if you have some time and you want to read something, read some of these one reviews, because I think it's just kind of like what we said. They ran into one of the pitfalls. Nobody kind of steered them through there. So their opinion of this game is complete trash, but the comments are hilarious. But anyways, moving on to Daniela.
Yeah, I think this game is another one of those that takes multiple plays. I mean, I doubled my score the second time I played this, and I think it is a cutesy game. I'm actually surprised at like the weight on this. It's a 2.82. I actually don't think it's that complex of a game to kind of get that score. There's a little, I don't know, there's some experience, I'll say, with the game that you need once you have the cards and you understand kind of how they all work together. But that, to me, isn't a hard thinky type of game that you need to, you know, lose your mind or marbles over. But I also think the rating and ranking at 8.0 might be a little too high too. So I think this game appeals to a certain kind of person, and I'm happy for them. It's a nice game. It's got good table presence. I think there's more to the game to discover for me personally, and so I would play this game for sure again. Well, guys, before we start barking up the wrong tree, let's go check out some Wondrous Creatures.
Wondrous Creatures is a 1-to-4 player worker placement, tableau, and engine building game that has you captaining a crew of colossal creatures to explore an uncharted island. The board consists of a series of hexagons representing various terrains and habitats. 6 face-up creature cards make up the wilderness market, with a series of goals also available for pursuit. On your turn, you can either place a crew member, place cards, complete an achievement, or recharge. When placing a crew member, you take one of your 3 creature meeples, or I'll call them creeples, and place it into 2 adjacent and empty hexagons on the map, paying a resource if a mountain is involved. After taking any egg you covered and receiving the reward for doing so, you interact with each habitat that is adjacent to your location. For each one, you either gain the associated resource or take a card from the wilderness with a matching symbol. Hand size is not limited at this point. When playing cards, you can place up to 2 creature cards into your tableau, paying the indicated cost from your resources. Each creature has an ability that may be instantaneous, ongoing, endgame, activated by choice, or activated at recharge. You may play 1 or 2 cards on your turn. You may instead use your turn to complete an achievement, gaining a trophy and placing an achievement marker to receive a small bonus. Main achievements have a single requirement, and the sooner you claim it, the more points you get. Single and multi-species achievements, however, have varying levels worth an increasing number of points. When you claim your first achievement, you also unlock your captain, who connects magnetically to one of your creeples and offers a special ability when used. Finally, you can use your turn to recharge, retrieving your creeples, activating certain card abilities, advancing the time tracker, and often placing more eggs on the map and refreshing the wilderness. The end game is triggered when the last trophy is taken, after which each other player takes one last turn. Players then increase their score based on endgame bonuses, trophies, creature card values, achievements, and remaining resources. The player with the most points wins the game and becomes the 8th wonder of the unnatural world. Wondrous Creatures was designed by Yom Chao-Wung and was first published in 2024 by Bad Comet. Creeples is a registered trademark of the 5th Meeple Board Game Podcast.
All right, guys, Wondrous Creatures, here we go. So, talking about some of the things that brings us joy under the sea, let's talk about what this game has. And I want to clarify first. So, David, is this game just what came in the box? Is there any upgrades that you had with this? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no upgrades.
Okay, so
it's just
what
base game.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is I just think the production on this game with the little creature meeples and your guy rides one of them, I just think it's so well done. I mean, that's I think why a lot of people pick this game up is because they saw that on the table and was like, I gotta have that. There's got to be a good game there somewhere. And I do think the game is there, but I just remember looking at it for the first time and I was like, wait, I could put one of my dudes and he rides that guy on the map. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can get that, game. So just
and it's magnetic, so it stays.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons for that point, but I'll let you guys go. Yeah.
And sometimes you worry, okay, they've got this cute little thing, but is the game any good?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the game is good. Double hex worker placement, I think it's unique. Maybe there's other games that do that. I don't know, but it's at least unique for games I've played. and then finding the right place to get what you need at that point is a really fun aspect of the game for me every time I play it. It's I think it's hard to be unique in worker placement, and I think Wondrous Creatures does a pretty good job of doing that.
Yeah, my comment is the same as yours, that worker placement, one of my favorite mechanics. And this one's really cool because, as you said, you're placing them over 2 hex tiles and you're getting everything around it. So just by simply turning it slightly, you get a whole bunch of different resources. So you really got to consider that. And I know Danielle is going to talk a little bit about blocking on this a little bit later. So I'm not going to go into that just yet. But I do like the worker placement part of it. The other thing that I really like about the game, comparing it to one of the other games that we just talked about, is the way that those cards cycle through. When you have that, market of cards, they are always refreshing, and that's a plus, but it also could be a minus, because sometimes you're looking for something and it's there and then it's gone and then you're waiting. I know there's been a game or two where I'm looking for one type of card because that's what we're all trying to base upon, those bonuses at the end of the game, and they just were not showing out. One pops out and you know what? Somebody else grabbed it right away. So there's some competition there. And I understand there's ways to mitigate it, and you can try to take advantage of that, but it's a plus and it's a minus. But I do like that you are seeing more cards. There's a big stack of cards. There's probably 100 some cards, and through the game we'll go through the deck usually at least once. So you're going to see a lot of cards.
Yeah, I think I have a disclaimer on this game. So this game isn't for the faint of heart for starting out playing this game. I was incredibly overwhelmed the first time that we had played this game. However, I think everybody sitting on the table is going to be surprised to hear me say that I think this game is one of the top wonderfully balanced games that I've ever played, because there is so much to do. You can move off of getting resources and you can go and try to get points elsewhere. You can go to the card level. You can go use your nets for different things. Like, there is multiple things and ways to track down different things that you need when you are being blocked. And I'll talk about that later, but it's part of the game, right? But there's a number, again, of different ways there are eggs you can collect. There's just so much in the game to do and discover that you can't do it all. And it's really multiple games with inside of a game that you're just going to pick a track and try to go down it. But if you have to get rerouted, it is what it is. Go for the next thing. So
yeah, and kind of expand on what Danielle is saying. I feel that there are general goals that everybody's trying to race to and stuff like that. But I think that some of them, if you get them done, I always feel that it's an accomplishment. Whether you win or lose, you feel like you put in the work to get some of these goals. And, sometimes you just see somebody else go and you're like, yeah, I know what that took to get your marker up there, because some of these are just crazy. And you're like, how can we do them all? And sometimes, it's almost like, even though we're competitive, sometimes I am cheering somebody else on just to see them accomplish that goal, because I'm like, at least one of us did it, in that game. Because I do think that this stands out. And when you actually accomplish something, it's not just like a free point salad. I feel like a lot of times those goals, you had to work for them in a lot of different ways. Not all the time, but most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some are easier to get than others. There's one goal where play 2 of each of 5 different kinds of cards, and there's at least one of them that there's hardly any of those cards in there. That's the way it feels like. And if you accomplish that one, that's definitely one where you did something. And also, you're probably a fool for even trying, right? Because I think I've seen one person so far do that one. And when you seed those accomplishments, they're seeded in a way to where a lot of that synergy is not going to be there. So if you're chasing one achievement, you're probably not able to chase another one at the same time. Right. There are things, though, that maybe I have a card that gives me a benefit. It'll go in a certain way that also has an end game score and then an achievement. And that's where I try to find those combos. And I'm always looking for that. Hey, how can I do, take a step towards 2 or 3 different achievements all at the same time? But you've got to build that for yourself. See what's on the board, see the cards that come up, because the game's not going to throw them at you. You got to find them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also think with this, I enjoy, again, the clarity on the cards of the different resources you're supposed to get. I'm never looking at something and going, oh, that coral is the same as the flower, right? Like, there's no mix up of what you're looking for. You may see on the top, like, and you may grab the wrong kind of color or component, or you thought it might have been something different because you were looking for a different, like, whether it's the egg or the actual resource that you're trying to get, that could be a little confusing, but once you see that on the board and all those like are they octagons or what are they? Hexagons?
Yeah, hexagons.
Yeah,
I think.
hexagons
Yeah.
on all that. You know what you're looking at. Like, and I appreciate the clarity in that on the cards as well of the resources.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of an element of race in this game too, because you're racing to try to claim those goals first, and you are looking around to see what other people are doing. I see David over there with, 7 of the 9, particular types of areas that he needs in order to claim something. And do I jump on it? And I think Chris, you snagged one of them out from under me. I was hoping to get the 5.1, and I think maybe you took it, which stretched me to go look for more because there's that element of the race. I guess I just add that you do need to be paying attention to what others are doing in this game, because if not, and you're just doing your own thing, I think you're going to miss too many things and miss too many opportunities for points.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on what Pete is saying, though, I do think there is such a great element. There's a race element, but sometimes you don't even really want to get to the top. I mean, there's categories that when I play this game, I'm just going to concede, because one of the benefits of getting one of your markers up there is that you unlock your leader's ability to actually do more. And so I think sometimes you have to weigh the decision, do I have a leader that's actually a good ability, which we can talk about and discuss if they're all good or not. But I think some of the leaders, I'm like, yeah, I want to make sure this guy's ability is in play as fast as possible. And so I'll just sacrifice this column. I'll take the 3 on it and let other people race to try to get more points than me, so that I have another ability. And I like that decision space. One of the other decision spaces I really like about it is that when you put a character down on the map, we were talking about you get resources, and you could either get those resources in terms of like, hey, I want a coral, or you could look at that card row and take a card that matches that habitat to put in your hand. You still have to be able to pay for it to play it, but I like that the resources, when you place your guy out there, they're dual purpose. You could either take the actual hard resource, or you could take a card, and that decision is always weighty. I feel like, especially if there's a good draw up on the board, but you really need that resource in order to play stuff. It's what am I doing and when am I doing this?
And that is so key. Like, if rewind to 15 seconds to re-listen to what David just said, because you may not want to go, like, you would think, oh, I need to take time to unlock my person, but that person may not help you down the road. The same thing goes for when the I'm not going to call them end of goals, but the goal cards during the game come out and you see them in front of you. And one of them was to have 10 eggs unhatched, right? But if you hatch your eggs with certain cards, you're getting other points for them. There is a lot of space in this game to do so much. It can feel overwhelming, and I was violently overwhelmed the first time I played. But again, I just feel like there's so much room to do. If you miss one thing, go on to the next thing and try for the next thing. I don't feel like it's a game where, at the beginning of the game, I need to pick out all my goals, and that's just going to be what it is. I mean, you definitely try for that, but there's other ways to start helping you get points when you need them. So, all right. So with that said, let's move on to some of the things that maybe are frustrating in this game. I'm kind of just leading off that last feeling of when you're on this board, there's so much to do and so many different ways to use cards, and the resources that they kind of change and they flow, and it's just a little bit differently. So for me, that was like a really big problem. I definitely conceded the first game I was playing. I just stopped playing because I could not make heads or tails of what really was going on and how people were linking and chaining things together, because it was like, oh, I thought this card or that thing was supposed to only do that. So just, I guess have some grace for yourself.
You guys were talking about the captain's powers. I'm glad, David, that you found some that were good, because I haven't found one that I necessarily thought was all that great to where I would rush to unlock it. And even if you do unlock it, and maybe it's just the way we play it, I haven't found that once you unlock it, you're really going to be recharging that many times. You only get that power when you put that particular person down, which is once per recharge, and that's it. And so I don't know, when I look at the captain powers, it's neat that there's so many. It's neat that you can unlock them, but I don't know. They're just kind of meh for me.
I agree that I commented here that they're just kind of lackluster. You're absolutely right. I mean, we're probably doing 4 different recharges at the most. At least that's kind of been my experience and my thought. You might get that worker maybe the second round, maybe the third round, he might already be out. If you're lucky to get that, activated once or twice, and even then, it's nowhere near game breaking. I get one extra resource. To me, that's kind of I think they added it. It probably cut it, and you wouldn't even know that. But I get that you want your little worker out there, and it is cool. So I mean, that's good. So they had to do something with that to make it worthwhile. I just wish it was more. Maybe next time we just pick the ones that we want and maybe try to get something a little bit more. It doesn't even give you any direction on what to do either.
You're spending so much time and resources to just unlock that person. You think it would be confetti falling, to get that, and it doesn't feel like that.
Speaking of time, to me, this game's just a little too long. I looked at our plays, and I think it's 2 hours long. It's a long game. And this is a game where when I'm done, I'm drained. I don't want to play anymore. Don't ask me for a second game of it. I ain't going to do it. It's just too much. And I like what you're saying, Daniela, that there's a lot to do. There's a lot of different options. But to me, that they just don't seem really cohesive. And to me, it's a little bit like a point salad. I can do this and try to get this. And then the other comment there that I have, I want to get you guys' opinion, is the score differentials. And I looked at the plays that we had, and I mean, there's like a 50-point difference. And when I say 50-point difference, I mean, it's like 2/3 of what the leader is. To me, it just seems...
You're talking about from the first player to the last?
First to the last player. Yeah. I mean, there's a big spread. And yeah, I think all the plays, I think the winner's probably been a little over 100, 140, 150. And I know I finished one of the games, I think I had 80 or something like that.
And that's if we even got the scoring right, because you have to go to 50 and then you have to go back around to 100. So that's the point thing on the board is like a little
and I don't know. Maybe I didn't play the game real well. I think one of the games I did win, and I was surprised at that. I don't know how I won, but
like
I did.
Did you not feel like you were winning at that point?
No, and I think I ended up winning because of the end game bonuses that were there. So those are important to get too. So, trying to get games with end game bonuses can really change the outcome of the game. So, and that's what they're for. So I get it, and you got to try to strive for them. But that's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on the scoring.
I mean, for me, it kind of scores. It reminds me of Concordia a little bit, where you see some of the score, and for some people, that's like all the score during the game, because there's brown check marks that scored during the game, and then there's red ones that only score after the game. But I personally like the score, and I get it that the games sometimes tend to be from first and last, tend to be whatever, but the scoring mechanism itself is that there's some information here, but like Concordia, I wish they maybe put in the book, but maybe 2/3. I don't know if it's 2/3, but maybe at least 3/5 of your score comes afterwards. Because if you don't really know that, I think there was times where Danielle in the first game, maybe you got frustrated because you saw other people moving up that scoreboard, and maybe you were earning points in other ways, but it just didn't show its effects yet on the board because maybe you didn't know there was a lot of scoring that was going to happen after the game, but maybe not too. I'm not sure.
I think, though, to tag on to Pete's point, the first game, I'm thinking some stuff is only singular, where you can do a move, but then you don't realize that you can do other things with that as well. And then I wasn't understanding, I think it was the first game, I can't remember off the top of my head, where I think, Pete, you sat, you were almost done, getting what you needed, and your dragons just sat where they sat on the board, and nobody could get the resources that they needed to. So learning to work around that, I mean, my person was kind of decent the second game because I could go on the mountains where I could place a dragon. So if I pulled back, I was able to maneuver a little bit differently around it. But I think when you're looking at a game and multiple things can do multiple results, that's very difficult to try and work through the game, because you just think you're done. You don't think there's another way I can get any more points. Everybody else is doing this, everybody else is moving up on their tracker, everybody else has unlocked their person, and then you're just left for dead. So
yeah, I mean, the other point I have, my biggest con with this game is that recharge action, where you have to have all three creatures out on the board in order to take it. And so a lot of times you might want to take a recharge action, but you only got 2 guys out there. And so you have to put your third meeple, I shouldn't say guys, but you put your third one out on the table. And I don't like that it's that restrictive, because I feel like there's times where I want to pull back and there's times where I don't want to pull back. I also think that maybe it would be an element of like, can you bump somebody? Is there a card that lets you bump somebody off their space, because they've been just sitting there? Because I think Pete did use that as a strategy on one of the games. He's like, I don't care. I'm just going to put him here. And that's how it's going to be. I think that maybe you see that maybe in expansion, maybe not. I'm not quite sure. I know there's a lot of stuff coming for this game because it's done really well. But those are my biggest frustrating points is I can't do actions I want to do, especially the recharge. I'm like, well, if I built a deck around recharge and I can only do it, it's like I don't even care. I just want to place my guys as fast as possible. But then every time you pull them off the board, you're getting one step closer to ending the game. So it's kind of like a double negative if you build your engine. And I almost feel sometimes that I want this game to, I know Pete said it goes a little bit long, and it does on the time scale. But when I'm playing in game, I almost want this game to go one more round, because I feel like a lot of times I just built my engine and then the game ends really suddenly. And then I'm just done. It kind of reminds me of Revive, where the game just comes to a screeching halt at the end. And if you're not prepared for that, it just slams on the brakes and that's it. That's all we wrote. And I feel like it's a very fast break and not a gradual easing like I like in most games.
Yeah, I would not want an extra round, but I agree. It's like a hockey stick. It's like the game's taking forever. The game's taking forever. End games, you can see it's going to happen, and boom, it's like it's just over.
Yeah.
And the time between when that end game, you can see it coming, and when it actually is there is just way too short.
Yeah,
and you don't have enough time to get out what you want to get out.
Yeah.
All right, David, I'm going to ask you, because this is your game. You had it set up in the vault when we could come over to play. How long did it take for you to set up the game? Because to me, there looks like there's a lot of fiddly stuff, and I know you get that prepared for us. And thank you, all you guys when you guys prep games and have them ready to go. But I think number one, it's a table hog, and number two, I think the setup is quite a bit, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. I mean, it's going to take you somewhere between 15, 20 minutes to set this game up, maybe more if you're not organized. I think a lot of the problems have to stem from there's just no bag drawing. So every single piece of cardboard or chit that's down there, you have to flip over if it's not the right way flipped. And then, you have to put you have to seed a lot of bags, and you have to shuffle for the gold cards. And then when these ones come out, then you have to take these other creatures out so that they don't conflict. Kind of Chris was alluding to earlier. So you don't have 2 monkeys on there, so that you can't even draw a monkey because you took the monkey out for the singles. And so it's definitely a lot, especially at different player counts, because then different stuff happens to the board too. So you got to really read that rule book when you're setting it up based off how many players are playing, because the board map and the stages, there's like little just nuances in the setup that changes based on player count, which I find a little tough too. So yeah, but I will say if you play this solo, the bot is pretty smooth. so get a vault and you'll be in good shape.
All right, David, why don't you take us to the collector's corner here?
Yeah, so right now you can find this game on Amazon. It's going for $65 for the game, which if we're just going to base it on value and what you get, I do think you get a lot in this game for that price point. And I do think it's a well-produced game as far as the meeples and everything else that goes in there are magnetic. And then also all the player boards are recessed, which I really enjoy myself. And then right now for the used market, it's going anywhere between $45 and $50 used. At the time of this recording, it was out of print for a while, but I think they got a second shipment in, so that's why you're seeing it on Amazon and stuff again. But for a while, it was pretty hard to find. I know if you're looking at your local board game stores, you're probably going to find it more in the $54.99 range. I know some of our local guys up here have this now back in stock, and that's what it's going for, about $10 cheaper than on Amazon. So, try to support local if you can, but I know some of you don't live next to any of those, so, it's great that you can find this on Amazon if you need to.
All right, moving around the table, final thoughts. I'll start with Pete.
I like the worker placement aspect of the game. I like the game overall. I just think this is another game where I think they've thrown a lot of things in there. I can use my net to capture things. And it just seems like there's one or two things that are too much. Like I said, my special worker can do this one extra thing. I like the games that are a little bit more streamlined and not so much fluff. But it's a good game. I enjoy it. I think I won one of the games that we played, so it's got to be good. Chris.
Yeah, this is a game. The first time we played it, I was blown away by it. I absolutely loved it. Went online, started looking at prices, etc. I never did buy it. That hasn't gone away. It's not as strong as it was before. As we played it, there for me, I feel like there's a decent amount of downtime. It is prone to analysis paralysis with certain players, and that can take away from it. But I still really enjoy. There's a lot of things you can chain together, or a lot of things you can unlock and build as you're playing that game, and I really enjoy that about it. So if someone says, "Hey, I want to play it," I'll probably sit down there and play it. David.
Yeah, for me on this game, I do think this game probably plays best at a 3-player count. I think 4, it tends to run long. I think that, sometimes when your turn comes back to you, if people have AP at the game or analysis paralysis, it could take a while to get back, because there's a lot of things, especially if you get things chaining. If somebody builds a really good engine and they're chaining stuff together, their turn could be a lot longer than somebody else's turn. So for that aspect, I think that, personally, I would like to play this more at 3. I don't almost think it should go to 5. 3 is probably where I think it's the sweet spot at. But I really enjoy this game. I think it does offer, if you're looking for agency in a game, and a game that just wants to give you all these controls and you can pull all these different levers, you might not want to pull all of them, but you can, which I like. So there's not a lot of guardrails.
Yeah,
going over to Daniela.
I think that's a perfect explanation. For final thoughts of what you can and can't do with this game. There's an endless opportunity of things to do. I'm not sure if anybody made a video on playthrough in this game. I would highly recommend watching one, trying to understand the game, maybe even taking a look through the rule books. If somebody allows you to look at their thing just to see what the different cards do, take time to review the cards and really understand like the board. I mean, and maybe what some of the in scoring points are, and then just overall understanding how this game works. It's a lot looser in a good way than I think I was thinking of in the first place. So those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, just to follow on what you said, I agree. It would be great if there was a good playthrough teaching video or something. But I watched, I think, 3 different videos before we played the first time. They were all different. A lot of them were pre-Kickstarter. And it's like I watched 3 different games almost being played.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say if you're going to do this, find a teach that's more recent, because the older ones, they have changed this game than when the Kickstarter came out. And there's stuff
like the rules.
There's different, yeah.
Okay.
The way
just
a
how
lot of the things
people
flows.
interpreted it.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just the rules.
I think it was pre-Kickstarter. They changed some.
Gotcha.
Changed
Okay.
So just if you can find a teach that's more current than later.
All right. Well, before all the sweeping and scooping tires me out, let's head on over to today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys and the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 2.82 out of 5, with an overall BGG rating of 8.0. Discovered in the hidden realm beneath the Evertree, reigning fast and long from Everfrost to Bellsong, the Critter King, the Royal Resonator, watch out or I'll kick you in the twig and berries, Everdell. In the other corner, weighing in at 3.01 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 8.1. Lost for years in the swirling sea mists, growing coral and fruit and mushrooms to boot, the mage of the mountains, the cream of the creature crop, the red letter go-getter butterfly netter, Wondrous Creatures. And now let's pit critter against creature in today's Battle of the Funnest Showdown. All right, guys, you remember how this works. We're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. The game that gets the most votes wins each category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. All right, you animals, let's get it started with theme and production. I'll start with David.
So theme and production, this one is challenging for me because on theme, I actually like Everdell's theme a lot better, but on production, I actually really enjoy the magnetic stuff and all the recessed player boards that Wondrous Creatures brings. But when I think about both of them and what I really like, I actually don't even know what the theme of Wondrous Creatures is. But I'm going to go with surprisingly, I'm going to go with Everdell. I think the components are good enough for the game it is, and I just think I'm more fully immersed into what I'm doing there. I do feel like I go into that story that they're trying to tell. And I don't know what story Wondrous Creatures is telling, but I do love the production. But in this case, I will lean a little bit towards Everdell, which surprises me. I'll kick it over to Pete.
As far as the components, I think each one have great production value. I do like the actual components better. And in Wondrous Creatures, you get components, but they're little, little pieces that you're toggling up in your player board. And I just really like holding components and getting those. So for me, that's one of the things I think it edges it out in the production value. And I also think theme-wise, it's definitely much more stronger. At the end of the game, I feel like I did build my own little village, and it's really cool. You have your little workers who were in their houses, and thematically, it just makes sense to me. Wondrous Creatures, yeah, I'm going out and capturing them, but basically you're just trying to do set collection and scoring that way. And I just like, you're doing the same thing in Everdell, but I don't feel like I'm doing it as much. So it just plays better to me. Chris.
So your vote was Everdell?
Everdell, yes. Sorry.
Okay. I think the production on both of these is good, so it's close. I think the art is better on Everdell. It's just really, really cute pictures, and again, I can just see it all come together. The resource components, I think, are better on Everdell. I think I asked you, Pete, when I played, hey, is this deluxe of components? You're like, nope, it's what comes.
Standard.
I think, Daniela, you asked the same thing. Is this a deluxified version? Yeah, the magnet's neat. I think it feels like it should be even cooler than it actually is. Once I see it work, it's okay. But the theme just really, really works in Everdell. Components are better. For me, it's Everdell. Daniela.
So I think the components are better in Wondrous Creature. I think the theme is better in Everdell. And for kind of the same reasons that David had already mentioned, and I think Pete as well, when I'm playing the game, am I doing what the lore is telling me to do? I feel that comes through stronger through Everdell, but it's to me by a hair, because I do think that Wondrous Creatures is wonderfully produced as well.
All right, so Everdell sweeps theme and production. We'll move on to mechanisms. We'll go to Pete.
I am going to go with Everdell for mechanisms. I feel they're more pure. It's worker placement. I get my resources, then I play cards, and when I'm done, I pull things back. As I said earlier in the podcast, I think there's a lot to do in Wondrous Creatures. If that's what you like, then that's probably your jam. It's just not mine. I'd rather just stay focused with a couple mechanics rather than trying to get all these little corner cases. And I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels and really not getting everything that I feel like I should be getting out when I do that. So that's just my opinion. Daniela.
So for mechanisms, even though there's a lot to do in Wondrous Creatures, I feel I have more to do and I have more ability to get my game going. I felt like the one thing that I'm going to settle on for this with Wondrous Creatures as my vote is that Everdell's cards did not work for me as well as Wondrous Creatures did when I'm trying to make my sets and collections. Numerous times when we were playing, I could not get the cards together with the creature or the habitat. That drove me nuts. David.
So on this one, I get what Pete is saying. I'm normally on the same side as Pete on this table, but I'm going to go against Pete on this one. I'm going to go with Wondrous Creatures. I don't think Everdell does anything special. Maybe it did at the time it came out, but I just don't see it. I feel like it does what it does well. But I'm looking for something that's new and exciting and something that I feel like is sprinkling, what I love too, worker placement, but doing it in a different way. And just the way that I collect resources, I could take cards or, have the agency just to take the hard resource. I really like that decision space on that one. And then, if I get eggs, I could use them or not use them. And, what do I want to do? And I just love all the freedom that game allows, even though maybe all the mechanisms don't exactly all work together, I do like that they're all there and I have that freedom that they bring together. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Wondrous Creatures. I'm going to kick it over to Chris.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier I like Everdell's worker placement balance. I also like the ability to play cards for free. That's always fun when you can pull that off. At the same time, I'm also often frustrated by that latter one. And with respect to the events, which are, hey, I can claim that one first, etc. I feel like sometimes they don't work as well as, they don't always feel like a race. It more so feels like who got the cards, and so then you get the 3 points. For Wondrous Creatures, the double hex placement, the exploitation choice, that's cool. I'm not necessarily a fan of the achievements per se, but having some that are at different levels and you decide when do you want to claim it, that's an interesting choice for me as well. I find a lot of opportunities to be clever when I'm chaining things together and the butterfly netting, strategically timed to really get the most out of it. I like all that. It's close, but for me, it's Wondrous Creatures, which means Wondrous Creatures will take mechanisms 3-1. We'll go to value for your time. I'll start this one. Our games of Wondrous Creatures have been taking about 2 hours on average. Everdell's less than 90 minutes easy. That's not the only thing here, but I think it does come into play. I'll also say that I was surprised when I looked up and the Wondrous Creatures games only took like an hour 50 and 2 hours. They felt longer to me. I think that's indicative of where I'm going here. And I mentioned I feel a lot of downtime during Wondrous Creatures. There's analysis paralysis. I seldom felt that when I was playing Everdell. I haven't set either one up. But we did talk about it, where it seems like Everdell is probably the easier setup and teardown, maybe if you don't account for that tree, but even probably if you do. I really like both of these games. Neither one gives me that experience that's mountains above the other, but for the reasons I mentioned, I'm going to go with Everdell, and I'll go to Daniela.
Yeah, I think this is a complex vote as well, because if I'm wanting to play a more complex game and I want it to be harder, I want to play Wondrous Creatures. If I've got a short amount of time and I want to get in a good game with good worker placement, Everdell is that game for me there. I think for the amount of time, though, again, that it does take to probably set up and maybe get to the table, this is a toss-up for me. I'm probably just going to go with Everdell on this vote, just because of, time play and kind of getting through a game and having it be a little more cohesive than Wondrous Creatures, just by a little bit, not by a lot. Again, that's a hairline vote. David.
Yeah, for this one, I do get the play times, but I just get more value for my time playing Wondrous Creatures. I think what it provides for me, I like the crunchier stuff, especially as I play more board games and just in the hobby a lot more. I just enjoy that. For Everdell, it is good for what it does for the amount of time it takes, but I also think there's a lot of great games I'd play in an hour or two, and I'm not sure Everdell is always on that box, where if I'm playing and I know it's going to be 2 hours, I might be picking Wondrous Creatures over some other games. And so that's kind of where I judge it. If that game's going to fall in that category, what is it competing against? And to me, in this instance, I'm going to come out with Wondrous Creatures, even though it is a longer playtime. Send it over to Pete.
When Wondrous Creatures comes out on BGA, my vote might change a little bit. I just think that between the setup time, the complexity, Everdell is just, I get more out of it. Like I said, I don't feel like I'm waiting around. The turns go quickly. I would just rather play Everdell over Wondrous Creatures is really what it comes down to. Value for the time, Everdell.
All right, so Everdell wins value for your time 3-1. We'll move on to replayability. I'll start with Daniela.
Replayability, no question, Wondrous Creatures. Again, Everdell, the sameness with the cards and the cards not being able to move. I didn't feel like I was able to move enough, and which kind of stalled the game out, I'll say. So for me, the amount of things you can do in Wondrous Creatures and the different tracks you can take to get points is much greater, and I'm more interested in that when we're trying to get points. Pete.
I'd be curious to see if Wondrous Creatures comes out with different maps, because I think that's one of the downsides of this. The map is always the same. The initial setup's always the same. You know which spots are going to be valued more than others when you first start to play the game. With Everdell, as I mentioned before, when you set up those wooded areas, it can really change how the game feels and how the game plays. So as far as replayability, base games, I think they're close, but I think Everdell gives you a little bit more out of that. You know, it might be different when we get expansions, or if we look at expansions even with Everdell, which I think can also really shake it up. So I think that would be an interesting to follow up on later. But for now, I'm going to go with Everdell. Chris?
Yeah, when it comes to Wondrous Creatures, there's a lot of variety in those creature cards. I mean, a lot of different variety as far as what they do. That variety is not quite there for Everdell, at least not in a way that, for me, has been exploitable. At the same time, I think that could work in Everdell's favor, where, hey, I can't cycle the cards as easily, and so part of the challenge of that game is, okay, but what can I do with what's here, rather than, oh, wait a turn, and I'm going to have a whole new set of cards out there, and I'll just figure out what to do there. Wondrous Creatures, as you mentioned, Pete, doesn't have variability in the board, but I know you're saying that, hey, that it can change up with what you're putting in the forest. It's still relatively the same there. Despite everything I might have said against Wondrous Creatures, for some reason I still feel like Wondrous Creatures offers me more replayability. It feels different when I play it every time. I'm going to go with Wondrous Creatures, and I'll kick it over to David.
Yeah, I'll just make this short and simple. I'm just going to pick Wondrous Creatures on this one. I just feel like when I look at replayability, how many paths to victory are there? I always just feel that every game I played, and I played about 10 games so far of Wondrous Creatures, both solo and with people, I feel like almost every game I've played has been a little bit different because the cards play differently. If you can't get a certain card, you know, I think I'm at the point where can I negate somebody else's card as far as like if I see them going on a strategy, can I do a different strategy that can, you know, because I know they're not going for certain cards, you know, at that point, and they're going to throw them away. So I want to go down those paths because I know it may be easier to get those cards. But that's kind of where I'm at with replayability. I do think, you know, Everdell's great, and I do like that the maps switch a little bit on the factor. I hope Wondrous Creatures has some new maps in its future because I would really like to see that. But I'm going with that way today.
All right, so Wondrous Creatures, by a count of 3-1, wins replayability. We now have a 2-2 tie, so it all comes down to the fun factor. I'm going to start with Daniela.
If you would ask me this a month ago. Oddly enough, I'm thinking of the player interaction in these two games when I'm thinking of this game and how we were as a group interacting with each other. And I know there can be a lot of AP, like with Wondrous Creatures, and people like having to chain so many things together and it taking a while. But I feel like there's something in Wondrous Creatures that when we were playing, we all knew kind of what goals everybody was going for. We were interested in seeing what people were doing, how they were moving. We had a little bit more argumentative of like, can you get out of the way? Can you pull your characters back? Can you do this? Can you know, like for some reason I felt the interaction in that second game was good. I'd like to play these games at different player counts. I feel like even though I've played Everdell twice, like I feel like I've seen it all. And that there was a lot of just waiting around like to do my turn. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm fully willing to admit that. But for now, it's going to be Wondrous Creatures for my fun factor. Chris.
Yeah, I enjoy both of these games. I've contemplated making a purchase of both. So just to be clear, I consider both of these really fun games. I like them both a lot. Downtime between turns is a big fun killer for me. Because Everdell has the advantage there, I'm just going to go with Everdell for fun factor. I'll kick it to Pete.
Yeah, fun factor. I have Everdell as well. I think it's when I think about fun, it's can I introduce this game to other players? I think Wondrous Creatures is a great game. It's very complicated, and I think it's a game where you got to really kind of study up. To Daniela's point, in Everdell, your first game was a learning curve, but then you did well. You did better the next game because you learned what those cards are. For me, I enjoy Everdell a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more pure game. Again, I do enjoy games that are complicated. It's just, to me, those little things that you're doing, you know, with the nets and that, it just, you use that, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze? And for me, Everdell just gives me more out of it. David?
Yeah, so on this one, I'm going with Daniela. Surprise, surprise. I do really like Everdell. It's not nothing against it, but I just love being able to pull any lever I want when I feel like I want to. And, you know, I have limited resources in order to do so. And sometimes I feel that, when I do pull a lever, I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to pull it again. But the fact that I can pull it, and the game doesn't handicap me in that respect, I just really love the free flowiness of it. And for me, that's what's really fun in the games I'm starting to like, is just not sandboxing necessarily. There are still rails somewhere, but the fact that I just have the agency, if I choose to spend the resources, I can do it. And I like that I'm making those decisions, not the game making it for me. I can use those resources any way I want, eggs any way I want to, when I feel the timing is right. And so therefore, the fun factor for me is going to go to Wondrous Creatures.
All right, so at Fun Factor right now, we have a 2-2 tie. We do have a fifth meeple, Dave. He doesn't join us on the podcast, but he does join us at the table, and he always gives us his opinions in case we need it. We break our ties with Dave. Pete, what did Dave have to say on this one?
All right. Well, Dave said, I select Everdell for the fun factor since the cards and engine building works nicely with the theme. I enjoy the puzzle aspect of how to collect the buildings that work together and the worker placement when players are in different seasons.
All right, so Everdell by tiebreaker takes the fun factor, and that'll do it, folks, with a score of 3-2. Everdell completes the journey to win today's Battle of the Funnest.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and if you'd like to get in touch, just email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, remember, the early bird gets the worm, but who wants to eat worms anyway? Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Adios, amigos.
Tragedy. When you're picking your butt and your finger gets stuck, tragedy. That's going to suck for Meeple Madness.
Wondrous Creatures was designed by Yam Chol Wong, and that sounded better when I said it. Chol Wong. Okay. No, I'm feeling bad at this point.
Just read the freaking thing.
I'm out.